Finally, we are live and on the air. Welcome to our show. It is Friday, January 29th, 2016, end of the week. Thank goodness it's Friday. And to repeat the program notes that I already said over on BAM User, the Lady Claire will be our third-hour guest. And next Tuesday, our guest will be Gilad Otzman. He's doing a tour of the United States. He's setting up all these workshops. He's got things to talk about, so we're going to be talking to him as well. Now, getting on to the news in the international war zones, the UN peace talks on Syria are stalled. The U.S. wants one group of people to show up. The Syrian government wants a different group of people to show up. The political opposition has decided to sit this one out because they're not getting what they want. And, of course, we know the U.S. doesn't want peace talks to happen anyway. They want to go on in and conquer Syria and put in an obedient puppet ruler. Same pattern they have been following 50 times since the end of World War II. Now, in the realm of diplomatic whoopsies, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani was invited to dinner by French President Hollande, but apparently when Rouhani found out they were serving pork and wine, both of which are forbidden in Islam, Rouhani decided to take a rain check. Now, whether I can't believe Hollande didn't know that these were going to be offensive items on the menu and may have been put it on there just to make Rouhani look bad for turning it down. Vietnam is out there wagging their finger rather furiously at China for suspicious activities in the Spratly Islands. Whatever that may mean. Everybody's out there still rattling their sabers, trying to prove how tough they are. But at the moment, fortunately, nobody's shooting at each other, and that's a good thing. All right, moving into the economy, we're seeing all these indicators. And yes, they had a wonderful, wonderful stock market. End of the week, end of the month, they massaged it, they got their happy ending. Doesn't really mean anything. They're just creating instant money and keeping the stock market propped up, and the rest of the economy is falling apart. The global economy is so bad. How bad is it? It's so bad, central banks around the world are starting to panic. And the Japanese central bank just went into negative interest rates. In other words, if you have a savings account in a Japanese bank now, it's shrinking. And I know the Japanese are great at miniaturization, but not for your money. It's not supposed to happen that way. And it's a temporary measure. It doesn't cure the fundamental problems. It's just a holding action. Now, over at Deutsche Bank, a lot of people are keeping an eye on the Deutsche Bank because it's had indications of difficulty for quite some time. They're basically scrapping all bonuses for executives. Good move. The board is having to own a loss of 6.8 billion euros. That's a major, major loss for a bank of that size, and it's not even addressing the fact that Deutsche Bank has a 73 trillion euro derivatives exposure. Bit by bit, this is starting to really fall apart. Ron Paul's out there with the comment saying the Federal Reserve is in a box. They're out of tools and out of tricks. They did the rate hike last December. It's caused all kinds of damage. They're going to have to back off of it at some point, maybe even go into negative interest rates as well. Venezuela is on the brink of a complete economic collapse. But there's a little bit of good news out there. Remember all those people who were rigging the LIBOR and making billions and billions by rigging that London interbank interest rate? They all got off scot-free. Not one of them is going to prison for what they did. So, good news if you're a LIBOR rigger here. All right, let's get into the politics and the candidates here. And I wanted to get into this and spend some time with it today. What's going on, as you know, Donald Trump decided he was going to take a pass on the GOP debate on Fox News last night. And despite not being there, it appears he won because everybody who actually bothered to tune into those debates came away with the feeling that none of the people still on that stage made a convincing case for why they should be president. And there was a lot of whining and going on back and forth. And over on CNN, they were covering Donald Trump's rally for the veterans. And Trump apparently succeeded in raising $6 million for veterans with this rally. And a lot of people, especially veterans, are going to say that's a good thing. That's a far better use of Donald Trump's time than sitting up there on the stage at Fox News and having planted immigrants and planted Muslims in the audience scream things at him. Now, Bill O'Reilly got to briefly talk to Donald Trump on his Wednesday night show and was talking about the debate issue. And Trump reminded O'Reilly very gently, well, not too gently actually, that Bill O'Reilly, as a condition of getting this interview, had agreed that he wasn't going to bring up the debate. But Bill O'Reilly went ahead and did it. It was another form of ambush. So everybody's saying, what's going on here? Where is the source of this animosity against Trump coming out of Fox News? Well, we know the entire GOP establishment wants Trump gone. So does the Democrats, obviously, here. But it turns out Corey Lewandowski, Trump's campaign manager, blew the whistle that Brooke Salmon, who's the daughter of Fox News Channel Vice President Bill Salmon, is the national press secretary for Marco Rubio's campaign. A little bit of nepotism going on in there, so there's a little bit of bias. I mean, openly. And it's kind of amazing because Marco Rubio, like Ted Cruz, does not meet the requirement of a natural-born U.S. citizen to be president. Marco Rubio was born in Miami, but both his parents were Cuban citizens. They were not American citizens. He doesn't qualify. And it's amazing to see the political establishment just not care about the Constitution anymore. The corporate media doesn't care about the Constitution. They think it's just getting in their ways, and it's time for that blankety-blank piece of paper to go away. Well, I refuse, and so should you. That Constitution and the Bill of Rights exist to protect you from abusive government. And the only reason for the government to want to get rid of it is because they want to abuse you. We're going to take those American taxpayers, we're going to whack them upside of the head, take more of their money, take their children. We're going to have so much fun if we can get rid of that Bill of Rights. We're going to take a break for our first commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Keith is in our control room, twiddling the dials, dealing with all the technical gremlins, which seem to be breeding faster than those Zika mosquitoes. And getting on back to the news, Donald Trump has picked up an endorsement, and even more than that, support, from an Indian American group in the New York tri-state area. They formed their own PAC to support and raise funds for him. It's rather interesting that despite all the screams about Trump being a racist, and he's getting a lot of support from various minority groups. Now, if you didn't tune in to the GOP debates last night, and according to the overnights, hardly anybody did. There were a couple of moments that were worth commenting on. Ben Carson came on out with this attitude of how he's ready to go to war with Russia right now. In fact, he described Putin as a one-horse country, apparently a reference to the many photos we have of Putin horseback riding. And Ben Carson was out there saying, we've got to defend Ukraine against Russian aggression. We've got to get NATO in there. And, of course, Ukraine is not actually a NATO member. But Carson wants to put in the missile defense system. We want to give Ukraine offensive weapons. So Ukraine has turned into an absolute meltdown, and Ben Carson wants to just go on doing more of the same. What was that classic definition of insanity? That's there. The high point of last night's debate came from Carly Fiorina, who commented about Hillary Clinton. She's escaped prosecution more times than El Chapo. Let's get Sean Penn to interview her. So we have to score one for Carly on that one. That was a brilliant zinger that she came up with here. Now, getting on to Hillary Clinton, there's been yet another new development in the saga of the emails, this last batch of emails that's supposed to be released by the State Department. Now, as you know, just about a week ago, when the big monster Snowzilla was coming in to the New England area, the State Department sent a message to the courts that are enforcing all of this release of information that the snow was going to delay their processing of the emails, and they wanted an extension until the end of February, conveniently after the first 4 primaries have been held. And there was immediately a counter motion saying, no, it's ridiculous. You had maybe 2 or 3 days of delay from the snow, and it's not like, this is a major problem. Well, today we got the announcement that some of the Clinton emails recovered from her private, insecure server are too damaging to national security to even release. They're not even going to redact them. They're just withholding them completely. 22 documents, at least, in full. So basically the thinking in Washington, D.C. is, all right, the suckers didn't buy that snowstorm made us late excuse. So we'll just bury all these emails and say they're a threat to national security and that will shut them up. No, it won't. And last week when the State Department was trying to get a 1-month delay because of a weekend snowstorm, I speculated, there's something really juicy in this last batch, and here we have the confirmation of that. So we're getting the none your business treatment, which means we are all free to imagine the worst possible interpretation of what's going on, which would be that the FBI has discovered that, yes, indeed, Hillary Clinton was putting these highly classified documents on her private server to sell to foreign governments, collecting and laundering the payment through her charitable, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, foundation. This is not going to help Hillary Clinton because it reeks of cover-up. The White House at this point is out there saying they're not certain anymore that Hillary's not going to be indicted. In fact, there's another article out here from the PoliticalInsider.com saying the only thing that's going to save Hillary from jail right now is a presidential pardon, which I'm sure Obama will do, and for exactly the same reason Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon, to just shut down any more questioning or examination of what's going on. Remember, when Ford came on, our long national nightmare is over. Pay no more attention to what was going on at the Watergate and its links to the Kennedy assassination. And they're going to do exactly the same here. Because the scandal of a serving Secretary of State running an espionage operation for foreign governments right out of the State Department is a scandal that will destroy what little remains of the credibility and legitimacy of the federal government of the United States of America. That's where we are right now. Turning up to Oregon, the FBI has released a video of the shooting of Robert Lavoy Finicum. It's an aerial shot from overhead in a helicopter. All the little text around the screen has been blacked out. It's not very clear. It doesn't really answer any of the questions as to what was going on. There are trees in the way. But the FBI put it out there and said, see, this proves that we are right. No, it actually doesn't. It's not clear at all what's going on the ground. And again, where are the dash cam videos that were much closer to what was going on? Where are the body cam videos that were much closer to what's going on? Why are we being given this video that's shot from way up in the sky looking down? Now, a lot of people, especially Aletho News, are saying this was a political assassination to basically try and shut down this whole issue of questioning the constitutionality of the Bureau of Land Management's actions. That's what they're protecting. Every time the government gets caught being legally in the wrong, whether it's Ruby Ridge or Waco, the Bundy Ranch, the Hammond Ranch, they respond with violence. Kill everybody, nobody asks any more questions. Dead people don't have standing in court. So, the government's out there trying to say, no, we were right, we were justified, all this stuff. We're not listening anymore. You guys have lied to us so many times. Only a moron is going to even bother listening to what the government and the police have to say about what happened. You always have an excuse for why the violence is happening to the American people, but the violence against American people continues to go on. Nothing has changed, despite all your yap, 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 yap. Oh, and by the way, big surprise, the Oregon State Police who killed Finicum were trained by the Israelis. A repeat of that pattern. Down in Mexico, there's been another mass disappearance, and once again, the Mexican police are at the center of the questions of just what happened to these people. It's starting to look like the police are bigger criminals than the criminals. Got to start, calling the criminals for help. They're going to take less. You're less likely to be killed by them. Got to take a break. We'll be back with a phone call after these few words. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we get to this phone call, who's been waiting very, very patiently, there's an update from what's going on up in Oregon. The official FBI statement, which of course is completely, utterly worthless, is saying that Finicum was shot because he reached his right hand to his right side where the FBI says he was carrying a gun, and that justified the shooting. The word coming back from the wildlife refuge is Finicum had left his gun at the refuge, and he was reaching to his right side because he had already been shot once. You get an injury. What's the first thing you do? You put your hand on it. Now, given the long history of the FBI lying to everybody about everything, I'm going to go with the Oregon people on this one. As far as I'm concerned, the FBI has zero credibility. Let's take some phone calls. We have Al in Delaware. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. First of all, I would like to tell you and your listeners that I am a Homeland Security expert from the state of Delaware.
Okay.
Since we have had an issue in the past of armed standoffs like Waco and Ruby Ridge end in a lot of blood, I took it upon myself, having understood where all this is going to end up, I took it upon myself to contact the FBI, contact all interested parties in Oregon to see if we could squeeze out a positive solution out of this whole thing.
Okay, well, I've got a positive solution. The federal government goes back to complying with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and we can all kiss and make up.
I completely agree, but okay. We got to get them to that point. So I was in contact with a journalist who was embedded with the 3%ers who were actually at the compound. His name is Mike. I'm drawing a blank. Mike Emery.
Okay.
And we would go back and forth on what was going on. So he gave me a whole bunch of phone numbers to call to be in touch with people at the refuge. My goal was to try to find a direct line to talk to the governor, to try to convince her from my background and from my schooling, I could assist her in navigating the entire state out of this debacle that she finds herself in without one person getting killed, not one. And I saw an article that said that she had contacted them, so that's what my initial wanting to contact everybody to see if she left contact information for her office directly. I wasn't able to find any. Lo and behold, the last number that I called was Ammon Bundy himself.
Okay.
And I asked Mr. Bundy, I said, I identified myself, and I told him that if there was a peaceful way out of this, would you entertain that? Would you let us work together?
Oh, he's already been out there calling for a stand down. He's repeatedly said, this has gone on far enough, let's stand down before anybody else gets hurt. But I think the sticking point is that these people at this wildlife refuge want the government to acknowledge that they have been acting outside the law, and the government's not going to do that. When they met to negotiate with the FBI's negotiator, the first thing they said is, we have documentation here that the Bureau of Land Management has been cheating ranchers out of their land, and the FBI negotiator said, I don't care. I'm not interested. I could care less. It doesn't matter if the government's right or wrong. We've got the guns. We've got the drones. We've got the spy cameras. And that really is the point where we're at right now, where as long as the government refuses to acknowledge when it is behaving badly, we're going to have these frictions. It's just like John F. Kennedy said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. I don't like that. I'd like to find a nonviolent way to resolve this issue. But until the government is willing to acknowledge to the American people that they have, in fact, been violating the law and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, we're not going to get anywhere on this. As long as the government keeps going on with this presumption of governmental infallibility, and we're always right no matter how wrong we are, then we're at an impasse.
Right. Mike, here's the behind-the-scenes look at what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
There was a presentment being made by the people at the compound, and this was a very frequented place. All the community decided to come there and support Ammon. He's not alone.
Yes.
So what they wanted to do is find a constitutional way out by declaring the sheriff unfit to be sheriff because he advocated his duty to the federal government. And that's not what sheriffs are supposed to do.
No, they're not.
So,
and doesn't the sheriff, isn't his brother or something a BLM agent?
I have heard that. I have not personally confirmed that, but I have heard that as well. So the issue is that the constitutional presentment had been given to the federal government, and it was due to expire this past Wednesday. And by Thursday, they would have been able to constitutionally act on removing the sheriff so that they could put a constitutional sheriff in there so we could turn this whole thing around. Well, that's why the federal government decided to, or actually I should say the state of Oregon decided to attack these people on the way to a constitutional meeting. That's where they were going.
Yes.
And Lavoie was very, very knowledgeable about the Constitution and about land rights and things like that. So from their point of view, he's probably a very big threat. But as I would love to get out the information to get out there, that the issue is not over. All the federal government and Oregon state government has done has just taken the loudest voices out of the crowd and basically threw them in jail. But the problem that made people loud to begin with still exists.
Absolutely.
So it's not going to go anywhere.
No, it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, this has been building this didn't happen overnight. This has been building for years and years, in fact, decades of federal government abuse of the property of the American people, whether it's private land or public land, and we know why they're doing it. It goes all the way back to when Richard Nixon ended gold convertibility for the Federal Reserve note. The rest of the world realized the U.S. government didn't have enough gold to collateralize all of its borrowing. So Nixon created the EPA to start grabbing land away from the American people and pledge it as collateral on these loans. Or more recently, we've seen this outright corruption, like this deal coming from Russia through Canada that involves Hillary Clinton, where they've already agreed that they're going to sell the mineral rights underneath the Hammond Ranch and a bunch of those other properties to Russia. And again, going back to the Constitution and the Enclave Clause, the federal government is not allowed to own any land other than what's underneath their federal buildings and federal infrastructure projects like harbors and airports and military bases. And the Founding Fathers put that in there specifically to avoid the situation we're in right now, where a desperately broke government is simply plundering the wealth of the public to keep itself in power and keep the ledger in the black for a little while longer.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's one of the reasons why I think that the state of Oregon neglected to have me as a negotiator, because I had already made a overture to Mr. Bundy himself, and I was in the process of trying to get in contact with the governor. The Portland FBI I was in touch with them, and at first they were very happy. They said, we know who you are, we got your credentials, we'll fly you out here, or we'll send a car to pick you up, whatever, we'll have you out here, and I never heard anything after that.
Yeah,
and I think it's because of the illegal actions that the Oregon state has taken that would come to light. So that they didn't have me come out there.
Yeah, it's not only the state of Oregon; it is the Bureau of Land Management and the FBI. And like I said, go back and look at Ruby Ridge and Waco. The government gets caught clearly in the legal wrong. Their solution is to kill everybody, and in order to basically make the problem go away. And unfortunately, I'm very, very concerned about the people who are still in that wildlife refuge, because we know this is what the government does. The only positive aspect out of this, of course, is that if there is some kind of an insurrection here in the United States of America, world opinion turns against which party draws first blood, and now we've had the government draw that first blood. And so already this is a public relations nightmare for the federal government.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're coming up on another commercial break, and I'd like to see it resolved peacefully. But these people are basically standing there saying this goes nowhere until the Bureau of Land Management acknowledges the crimes they have committed against the American people. That's the impasse. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be back after these commercials. Well, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, kind of an interesting little story from the Daily Mail, where apparently a Navy commander has been accused of diverting warships, to Asian ports for a Malaysian contractor who repaid the favor with prostitutes, so forth and so on. Apparently, this commander would send ships into certain ports where this contractor would make money off of servicing the ships, replenishment, repair, and he repaid the Navy commander with, girls, maybe boys. And apparently it wound up with the Navy being overbilled by $20 million for services and goods it never actually received. All right, we're going to grab a quick phone call here. John in British Columbia, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. How do I sound to you?
Perfect.
Okay, good.
The reason I called, I was reading the CBC yesterday and I saw a still from that Oregon shooting video, and I was curious because it just showed a still, and so and it said it was a full video. So I searched and I found a really good copy on RT and a really good copy also on LiveLeak of that shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody's focusing on the actual gunning down of the guy Lavoie, but if you look at that video before the shooting, just before the vehicle plows into the snowbank, there's a lot of really strange stuff. If you really look at that video carefully, and I know you've got a background in film and TV, and I know you know what a video playback should look like, and there's a lot of fishy stuff in there. There's some pixelation on the left, and it also almost looks like the guy who runs in front of the wagon. That's it's put in there. It just doesn't look right, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and if you could look at that maybe on the next break and really look at it, and just I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I got to be very honest. At this point, we're past talking about minutia. What we have here is another case of Israeli-trained police officers gunning down an American rather than acknowledge the fact that they themselves are the ones who are in violation of the law. We have these Oregon protesters on one side citing the law and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and on the other side we have the police saying, do what we tell you or we're going to shoot you. So which one is actually behaving like the criminal here? And that is the issue that we have to focus on, okay? So thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Let us not get tricked into arguing over little, tiny, meaningless, irrelevant details and stay focused on what's going on. There's a man who was fighting for his constitutional rights who has been gunned down by the police. That's all you need to remember. Now, speaking about guns, as you know, the gun grabbers are out there in full force. They're probably hoping that something is going to blow up in Oregon, so they've got more bloody shirts to wave around and say, see, we've got to take guns away from these people who think the Constitution should be the supreme law of the land. What kooks these people are. And as you know, on Obama's gun grab speech, he and a lot of other people, a lot of big celebrities, a lot of liberals are out there saying, we've got to close these loopholes. You can go to a gun show and just buy a gun and walk out the door with it. You can get fully automatic weapons. All of these are lies. And so, not too surprisingly, a lot of people have started going on out to gun shows with hidden cameras and checking for themselves. And what they are finding time and time again is the dealers at these gun shows are following the letter of the law. You can buy accessories and walk out the door. You can buy parts and walk out the door. You cannot buy a gun and walk out the door. You have to go through the national check. You cannot buy fully automatic weapons unless you've got a license from the government to possess one and are willing to pay the huge tax on it. They're lying, they're lying, they're lying. And one of the clips, they've interspersed these real-world shots from the gun show with these statements made by Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Obama and all these other celebrities saying, oh, the guns are bad. These people can go to gun shows and they can buy a nuclear missile and put it in their pocket and go home that very day. And they're lying again. All right, let's grab ourselves a phone call. Wes in Idaho, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Michael. I heard you mention the name of Anna von Reitz the other day. She was on the radio last night. I heard her for the first time for an hour and a half. The reception was not very good, but I have here a letter she has written to the United Nations, France, and Barack Obama, and isn't it time we start recognizing her teachings and that these things that we think are government are actually corporations? And another thing, one of their crimes is crime of personage, in which they capitalize all of the letters in our name. And that
okay, wait a minute. I got to back up here a little bit. Are you talking about Colonel Ann Wright, who lives here in Hawaii?
No.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this person you're talking about, and maybe somebody who called into the show mentioned it. I didn't mention her because I don't know who this person is. And it sounds to me, I mean, when you're out there talking about, it's not somebody that I really know, and I think you misunderstood something I said. So, Wes, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We got a lot of stuff to cover here before the lovely Lady Claire joins us back here in hour number 3, just over an hour from now. Okay, getting over to Flint, Michigan. The situation just gets uglier and uglier and uglier. They have now discovered there are 6 other cities in Michigan with even higher levels of lead in their water than the city of Flint. And let's see, they went out to Highland Park and Hamtramck areas of Detroit. 13.5% of the children tested positive for lead. Now, here's where it gets really, really ugly. We know now that the Flint and Michigan governments knew the water was a problem a long time ago and lied to the public saying, yes, it smells, it's funny color, it tastes terrible, but we promise you this water is safe. And we know they were lying. And it gets even better. When they found out how bad the city water was, Michigan officials started buying bottled water for their own workers. Government workers were getting filtered bottled water delivered to their offices. And I'm sure that all of these people on their very generous government salaries, which average about 30% more than yours do, knew the water at their home was bad, were able to buy filters and take care of themselves. Everybody else was told, it's safe, go ahead, drink it, lead and all. If you're a loyal American, you will love your lead. So clean water for the elites and thinly disguised industrial waste for the rest of you. Up in Ohio, same things emerging. Their officials knew the water was toxic. Hid it. And this is not the first time we've heard all this kind of stuff. Oh, the water is safe, the water is safe. Then we find out it isn't. Remember when it first came out that there was a problem with mercury in vaccines? They actually came out with a corporate media report. Now, mercury's good for you. Mercury's okay. Mercury in your being shut into your kid's arm, perfectly okay. Remember after Fukushima when Ann Coulter came on out and said a little radiation is actually good for you? Remember right after 9/11 when the first responders were working on the ground, when all that asbestos dust was in the air, and the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Christy Whitman, came down and on TV said the air around the wrecks of the building is perfectly safe to breathe. You don't need special equipment. Just go do your job. And all of those people, if they're still alive, are dealing with mesothelioma, leukemias, cancers. You need to keep all of that in mind when the government comes out and says, honest, the drinking water is safe. Really, we wouldn't lie to you. We're the government. We know what's best for everybody. All right, we got a caller waiting on the line. Unfortunately, we're about to take our top of the hour news and commercial break. So, Jimmy, I'm going to ask you to be patient. We'll be back here in a few minutes, and we'll grab your phone call. And also talking about basically everything that they're doing about the Flint water crisis, is all for show. It's all theater piece. They're not really going to do anything about the problem. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take a phone call. Jimmy in Texas. Aloha, Jimmy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I think I have a pretty cool. I don't know if you heard about that incident in France about them finding a fake pressure cooker type bomb thing.
Yeah, that was supposedly the U.S. Embassy had ordered some phony bombs for training exercises, and the FedEx package got ripped open. somebody may have been trying another false flag because they also had that incident where a guy tried to get into Disneyland Paris with 2 guns, extra ammunition, and carrying a Quran. I mean, it doesn't get more obvious than that.
Yeah, I have a pretty cool analysis about this whole thing that probably ties, like, everything together in a way. Like, if you would let me give it a shot. I think everybody should start investing in a pressure cooker now because, if you look at it now, it's a war against the people. Because you look at a country like Libya.
Now, wait a minute. When you say investing in pressure cookers, you mean to, annoy the government and keep them confused? I mean, we're not advocating people
No. I mean, the pressure cooker I've heard is the most efficient thing in the kitchen and uses a lot less energy than,
It is. It's great for canning. Canning your own fruits and vegetables. You use a pressure cooker for that.
That's what I'm saying. It's a war against, efficiency against the people to make their life more prosperous. Because when you look at Libya, it was by far, compared to our standards, a pretty good place to live.
It was until the U.S. came in and blessed it.
Yeah. And then you look at, Syria too, one of the most progressive Middle Eastern countries, next to, Iraq and everything. And what I'm trying to say is like these countries, and especially Russia, they tend to more, when they do stuff, it's more of the interest of not only themselves politically and their leaders, but they care about their people. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's what they're supposed to do. That's what ideal government does. The proper role of government is to provide for the community what the community needs but cannot organize for itself. Everything else is oligarchy.
Yeah, that's why you see, because like you said, it was probably a potential false flag, and then watch, you're going to start seeing pressure cookers disappear from the market shelves at a time when people need as many efficiency tools and appliances and just about anything they need. And it's not just pressure cookers, it's everything from the way they botched, the solar panel things to making it look like, it's just a fake, it's just a bunch of money. They make everything seem so bad that's good for the people, or they try to make it.
Well, they're trying to increase the sense of dependency. There's no question about that because dependency is slavery. Part of the issue of dealing with things like solar panels and whatnot is they were just scams to begin with, for cronies to make a bunch of money at taxpayer expense. But there is no question that under the guise of the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on this, the war on that, they're trying to take away anything that could potentially provide any kind of a military advantage to we the people. That's why we've got the ban on fireworks is all over the place. They don't dare trust us with anything that goes bang.
Exactly.
And the pressure cooker is another one. The reason for those shopping, the supermarket discount cards, you don't really get a discount with them, is they're tracking what you're buying to make sure you're not buying the household products that could be combined together to make a chemical weapon. And no, I'm not going to give you the recipe, so stop asking.
Mike, can I add one more thing? Because you think you hit it on the head on the nail about the whole, they want to make us not been able to fight militarily, because even when you look at Common Core, it tries to mess around with the math. And when you look at it in war, indirect fire is the most useful thing you can use, especially if you know longitude, latitude, trajectory, and stuff like that. And if you have a whole squad and a whole platoon that knows their math down packed, you got a pretty deadly force back there. And not only that.
Well, I think the real agenda with Common Core's approach to math is they want you to learn and repeat, but they don't want kids growing up able to think for themselves or analyze anything carefully, and that's why they're teaching a way of doing mathematics that basically is hobbling them, crippling them, so they can't get out a pad of paper and a pencil and say, let's see if this government's claim actually makes numerical sense. No, it doesn't. And I
think you said about college yesterday, college used to be a place for ideas and everything, and like you said, they want it to be dependent, so you go to college, spend all this money, and now you're dependent on paying their debt. But not only that, you can't even think freely because you're dependent on them thinking like them, or you don't get the piece of paper.
That's exactly right. Universities are rigid enforcers of the orthodoxy, especially when it comes to Israel. And I mean, I got to tell you, and yes, I'm an old guy. I acknowledge it. This country today is just so different from the country I was born into. And it has been very painful watching it die. It's like, you have a loved one who's got a withering disease, and you know they're going to die, and it's going to take a long time, and you've got nothing that you can do about it except sit and watch it happen. And I've been through that experience, so I know what it feels like. And I'm feeling exactly the same thing looking at the United States of America. It's just withering away. It's a failing empire, and it's succumbing to all the evils and corruptions that one sees associated with the collapse of an empire. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, it is sad, but I like that report, how they said, I think it was on the top of the news hour, about some anarchy program that they were spying on not only Israel, but everybody else in the Middle East. So there's probably some juicy bits coming out of that. And, it's like you said in one of your shows, I think anarchy at the local level and the county level, probably would be the best, because, I mean,
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Okay.
No. I say that, but I know.
Oh, okay. All right.
About how anarchy is probably a good way to go, and I think that at the local and county level, that would be the best, because they're the only ones who really know what their problems are, because they live there.
Okay, I think you're misusing the term anarchy. Okay, I'm in agreement with you, and so are the founding fathers, that government should be where it's doing its work. The county seat, the state capital, the city council, they know best what their neighborhood needs. They don't need any input or advice from somebody 3,000 miles away. It's only empire builders who want to control everything from the central hub, whether it's ancient Rome or the Soviet Union or the United States of America. The founding fathers said, look, these people out there in all the states and everything, they know best what they need. Just let them do what they're going to do. And the central federal government is just here to, arbitrate disputes across the state borders and, do those few things the states can't do for themselves. But of course, we've gone completely around to the reverse, where we've got central control, just like the former Soviet Union. And of course, we know what happened to the Soviet Union. Anyway, listen, Jimmy.
Yeah, but the world is turning to a self-dependency on themselves, because this food ban in Russia, I heard that Russia's booming now in their own food, like their locally food. It's a big old boom now. It's a big old.
They are, and there's a huge demand for Russian GMO-free exports, and that's why Monsanto is trying to ban all labeling here. So when you go to this,
that's why it's anarchy, Michael. That's why it's anarchy to them. It's anarchy to them because they can't control anything.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. All right, well, listen, we're coming up on a commercial break, Jimmy. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to have to let you go here. And before we hit the commercial break here, real quick, Senators Stabenow, Peters, and Congressman Kildee have announced legislation to help the families of Flint. There are 4 points in it. The first one is the federal government will provide $400 million in emergency funding to repair the Flint water supply, as long as the state of Michigan can come up with matching funds, which they can't. The other provisions are all about setting up, a little education program on why lead is bad for you. In other words, it's all for show. They're not really going to fix that water system, especially because if they do it to Flint, they're going to have to do it to all those other cities all across the country that have this exact same problem. We got to take a break with commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And this morning's announcement that there are some of these emails recovered from Hillary Clinton's server that are so top secret, they're just going to be withheld in their entirety, not redacted, not little boxes or anything. You don't get to see them at all. This is now too serious for even the most Hillary-friendly corporate media to pretend it's not an issue. We know that some of the material on Hillary's server involved intelligence gathered with spy satellites. We know in at least one case there was information that was provided by a human intelligence source, meaning an agent. Now, those two categories of information, spy data and human, are automatically classified on creation, which means that when Hillary said that she did not send or receive classified information on her server, she was lying. And we knew she was lying at the time. because the Office of Secretary of State does involve classified information. It's part of the job description. And she wasn't using her government-secured server, and she's claiming that she wasn't using her own server for classified information, so what server did she use for the classified information? That was the big hole in her story. Look for what should be there and isn't. And what was missing from Hillary's story was what server she did use for classified information. That was never there. Big, gaping hole. Well, the latest report we're getting is that the FBI is now going directly to those agencies that originated this information that is too secret to be revealed to you, the tax-paying public, who has to pay for it all and live with the consequences. And they're going to ask, were these documents classified on creation? And inevitably, the answer is going to be yes. You don't put something that sensitive out and then come back 3 weeks later and say, maybe we ought to classify that. It's very rare that something will be released and then retroactively classified. It does happen. I saw it happen many years ago when I was involved in that sort of thing. But we're talking top secret and above. Special access programs, HUMINT, SIGINT, satellite data, all the little acronyms that they have there. So it looks to me like the FBI is now basically moving on to an espionage investigation, and it's overdue. I did a quick web search out there, and my article on Hillary the Spy, it has started going viral. And I'm going to ask you, I put it back up at the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. Grab that article, post it everywhere. I mean, it's a perfect setup. Her weak email server, the charitable foundation, it's a perfect setup to repeat the 1996 Chinagate scandal, where the Clintons were selling U.S. secrets for donations. I'm not going to let go of this one. I am not going to let go of this one. And so here's the problem. We know the State Department wanted to delay releasing all this information until the end of February after the first 4 primaries to give Hillary a chance to get momentum toward the nomination. But if they think simply declaring these documents threats to national security, you can't see them, is going to improve the situation, no, it won't. Because everybody's going to assume the worst. That we had an espionage operation running right out of the U.S. Department of State, run by the Secretary of State herself. High-level treason and betrayal is a fact of history, and it looks like we've got another one here. Anyway. Now then, getting on back to this Planned Parenthood fiasco down in Texas, where the grand jury was convinced to not indict Planned Parenthood for selling fetal baby tissue. At the same time, they indicted one of the guys who blew the whistle for buying that fetal tissue. And it turns out that a member of the board of Planned Parenthood works in the office of the district attorney down in Texas who indicted David Deladen. We're seeing all these little family connections, whether it's over at Fox, where daughter of one of their executives is Marco Rubio's communication director. Now we're down in Texas, where Planned Parenthood is getting a free pass for running a grinder for little tiny babies, and the guys who called attention to it get prosecuted, and we find out there's a connection there. All this little dirty political machinery going on. Now, you remember not too long ago there was a shooting incident at a Planned Parenthood facility, which was basically exploited. Oh, poor Planned Parenthood, we are so misunderstood. Apparently, the judge in the case is keeping records of that incident secret. And the Supreme Court is now out there saying, you don't have a right to do that. What's being hidden here? Because the judge who was in that case, he's basically blocking requests for basic records like affidavits of probable cause. And the judge sealed them because, in his words, they are contrary to the public interest to unseal them. In other words, something else was going on. Maybe it wasn't an attack on Planned Parenthood. Maybe it was just a domestic dispute or a dispute among two people who just happened to happen inside Planned Parenthood. But there's something being hidden there. Story coming out of lifenews.com, why I will never drink another Starbucks coffee again. It funds Planned Parenthood. And I will remind everybody that boycotts are recognized nonviolent forms of peaceful protest. Israel's going to tell you otherwise, boycotts is Jewish hate and anti-Semitism and you love Hitler. Now then, little article we put up came out of Listverse. 10 horrifying facts about American eugenics. Now, most of us were raised to think that it was Germany that was all in love with the idea of the creation of the master race. But the reality is, Nazi Germany got the idea from the eugenics movement in the United States in the 1930s. Adolf Hitler was in regular correspondence to the leaders of the American eugenics movement that wanted to have a pure American race and to sterilize everybody else. And of course, after World War II, the negative connotations of eugenics and master race forced them to kind of go underground. But Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was quoted as saying, colored people are like human weeds and need to be exterminated. And of course, Hillary Clinton said, I admire Margaret Sanger enormously, her courage, her tenacity, her vision. By the way, we got a picture of Margaret Sanger giving a speech to the KKK. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, there has been a major study done in Europe, reported in the Telegraph, which basically analyzed 70 of the trials of the most common antidepressants. It's a far more reaching study than has ever been done before. And they found, to nobody listening to this show's surprise, that antidepressants double the risk of suicide and aggressive behavior, especially in young people. Now, this review, which is the largest ever done, looking at the effects, the real effects of antidepressant drugs, was carried out by the Nordic Cochrane Center and analyzed by the University College of London. And it's being written up in the British Medical Journal. These are all top-shelf respected organizations. And it goes back to that whole issue of all these mass shootings in the United States of America, which are blamed on the guns, and then we find out after the fact that all of these people who were pulling the triggers were either on or trying to withdraw from prescription antidepressants. And the pharmaceutical industry and government said, oh, no, these antidepressants, they're wonderful. Just go on taking your medication. Your doctor says you need the medication, and you don't need to know that, all these people whose brains are fried, and they go on out on a shooting rampage, were also on those medications. I remember this amazing video after Sandy Hook, where a group of citizens in Connecticut, using their state's equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act, wanted to get Adam Lanza's medical records to find out what medications he was on. And we do know he was on some of these. That came out. His friends and family were saying, yes, he was on this, he was on that. And this organization wanted to document that. And an attorney from the state medical examiner's office was at that meeting. Patrick Quanachet was his name. And he was arguing against releasing the information. And he actually said on the video, even if in just this one case the medication was responsible for the mass violence, that's not something the public really needs to know. And Patrick was wrong on a couple of points. First of all, it's not just this one case. Virtually all of these mass shooters involve these medications. We don't know about all of them because they started keeping medical records secret. And the public does have a right to know if, in point of fact, these medications are leading to this. Now, over at my website, in the right margin, you're going to see an icon. It's a giant capsule. And if you click it, it's going to take you to a resource page. It's been known for years these antidepressants are causing problems, but they make money, and that makes it all okay. Now, obviously the news covers the mass shootings, but I did a little analysis and discovered that the per capita incidence of domestic violence in this country skyrocketed at the same time these antidepressants started being prescribed to everybody. Increase in road rage, fights at bars, suicides. There's a real problem here, but Congress actually held hearings on it, but because they are dependent on campaign donations from big pharmaceutical companies, they did absolutely nothing about it. It's like the water in Flint. Yes, it's bad for them, but hey, we're making profit off of this, so who cares? These are dangerous medications, and I know this because I had a personal experience with them many, many years ago. I went to my doctor about a totally unrelated issue. Very minor and trivial, but my first marriage was breaking up at the time. And my doctor said, how about we give you an antidepressant so you don't feel so bad about your marriage? Oh, okay, that'll be fine. I was much more trusting and naive back then. And I took these things, and for 4 weeks I felt great. I was happy. I was fun to be with. I was invited to parties. We had all kinds of... And then the 5th week, I had this incredible black crash. And the only way I got through it is I just kept saying to myself, this is the chemical, this is the pill, this is something this medicine is doing to me. So I know how bad they can be. And if you look, there's another website, ssristories.org, and they have hundreds and hundreds of documented cases. And one of the ones that really sticks out to me is this young kid who was prescribed these medications for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which, by the way, the guy who came up with that, shortly before he passed away, he said, it's a fictitious disease. It doesn't exist. We made it up so we could sell pills. So this kid is on the medication for ADHD, and he attempts suicide. And fortunately, he's gotten to. And when it was all over, they said, why'd you try and kill yourself? And he said, I don't know. The idea just popped into my head, and I couldn't stop myself. That's a pharmacological reaction. They're dumping chemicals into your brain, and they don't understand what's going on in there. And so now we have this major study that's going to be written up in the British Medical Journal confirming what we have been saying for years. These medications are dangerous. I will never, ever take any more prescription psychiatric medication. They're completely unreliable. They are dangerous. Glad the real world is finally starting to catch up with what we've all in the independent media been saying for all these years here. All righty, let's see. The New York Police Department has decided they are going to start using a more potent form of pepper spray that will lead to fewer police shootings, because we'll spray this stuff on them and they'll curl up into a ball on the ground, and, you know, that will be this. We won't have to shoot these innocent people anymore. Isn't that a good thing? The problem with pepper spray, and for that matter tasers, is they're advertised as, you know, not causing any permanent real harm. We know that's not true with tasers. And we don't know what's going to happen when you spray this pepper spray, very potent pepper spray, on somebody who might actually be allergic to it. Police are out of control anyway. Up in Toronto, Canada, 4 police officers charged with perjury and obstructing justice. 17 offenses. Down in Palm Beach, a sheriff's deputy lied on a video about the circumstances for an arrest, claiming a driver was headed in his direction, making him afraid for his life. The video showed a different story. He's had to have a $500,000 settlement to the victim he shot. And we're seeing the same thing up in Oregon. Oh, we just killed somebody. I'll make up a story. You know, he had a phaser set on kill. Let's see. I'm going to leave this one because I know my wife is going to talk about that one here. Remember back during the manhunt for Christopher Dorner back in 2013, and the police just went on a shooting rampage, and they shot a newspaper delivery woman who was driving a pickup truck that kind of, sort of, if you really squinted in dim light, maybe could possibly have been the truck Christopher Dorner was driving. And they just, without identifying the target, they hauled off and shot her. No charges for them. It's perfectly understandable when the police are chasing a criminal. I mean, you know, whoever they shoot by accident just has to understand that's the price you have to pay to live in a peaceful law-abiding society. By the way, for you gun enthusiasts, Kalashnikov is actually starting up an AK-47 factory down in Florida. That's going to be cool. The AK is a nice weapon, for those of you who are into such things. Alrighty, we're coming up on a commercial break. We're going to come on back, talk a little bit about human-caused global warming, and running up to the top of the hour when the Lady Claire will be joining us with her unique perspective on the world. So we'll be back after these few minutes. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we get into human-caused global warming, Fox affiliate Up in Michigan just ran a poll. And by the way, polls are showing Trump's lead has extended despite not showing up, or possibly because he didn't bother showing up at last night's debate. But up in Michigan, he's holding a 3-1 lead over his closest opponent in the GOP, and is holding a lead over Hillary Clinton. Now, this is kind of important to keep an eye on, because Bernie Sanders is out there expressing a concern that is legitimate. And that is, of course, election fraud, which is rampant epidemic in this country. A lot of people were scratching their head over Hillary was over in Philadelphia doing a fundraising event when she's in serious trouble in the polls in Iowa. And it was like she doesn't care anymore. Or she already knows that Iowa's going to be stolen. Our whole election system is set up to allow elections to be stolen and to prevent and deter anybody going in and finding out what happened. And I think a good illustration of that are the Diebold voting machines. Now, Diebold itself has gotten out of the election machine business because of all the bad press. But it's a good example. Diebold got into the election machine business because they have a sterling reputation for the automated teller machines that they sell for banks, which never lose a penny from coast to coast, and they have built-in tracking and auditing. That's why when you put your card in that machine, you can hear inside the machine a little chattering. That's a little printer making a permanent paper record. The Diebold election machine did not have that. There was no double check whatsoever. And Bev Harris, over at Black Box Voting, found no less than 12 different ways you could get into the Diebold voting system, GEMS, and change the outcome of an election without leaving a trace. It has to be designed that way. Now, Bernie Sanders' concern is that Microsoft, which is very pro-Hillary, is providing online platforms for people who want to caucus without actually showing up at the physical locations. And Sanders is very, very concerned that inside, we know how crooked computers are. We know how botched up Microsoft software is. There's a very real danger there. I think Donald Trump, because he's got the money, ought to put up a huge reward for anybody who can prove election fraud this election. $250,000 would do it. To anybody, for $250,000, you'll have people who blow the whistle from inside. Because we do not have honest elections in this country. If it's a close election, vote rigging can shift it, can reverse it. If it's a landslide, like 3-1, you can't reverse that without everybody knowing that's what happened. And we know there are reasons to suspect Hillary Clinton of having used election fraud before, because back in 2000, up in New Hampshire, that was a make or break for Hillary. The polls had Obama in the lead in New Hampshire, and everybody's saying if Hillary loses New Hampshire, it's over. And so going into the New Hampshire primary, Obama was leading in all the polls. During the primary, Obama was way ahead in the exit polls, and then all of a sudden, miracle of miracles, the next day, Hillary had this amazing come-from-behind victory. And when they asked why the official results weren't matching the exit polls, and remember, the exit polls are done as a cross-check on the accuracy of the official results, the media came out and said, well, obviously the voters were lying to the exit polls for some reason, which is sheer utter nonsense. When you go to vote and you meet an exit poller on the way out, you don't know who that person is. You've never seen them before. You don't care what they think about you. You're not going to lie to them. It's just not worth the trouble. But that was the excuse they gave. Why Hillary had this amazing come-from-behind victory. If you've never been there, you need to go over to blackboxvoting.org. That's Bev Harris's website. She has done an absolutely phenomenal job of exposing election fraud at all levels of American government. And she is the centerpiece in an HBO documentary called Hacking Democracy. And if you haven't seen that, you should see that as well. I think HBO would be well advised to run it again as we head into what is going to be one of the crookedest elections in U.S. history. Anyway, that's what's going on with the elections. Now, in the realm of human-caused global warming, snow and extremely cold temperatures are going to hit Britain this weekend, minus 15 degrees centigrade. Baltimore is having some serious problems because, as you know, they got all that snow and ice a week ago. Then it warmed up a little bit to start melting it. Now it's frozen again. They had a heavy overnight freeze. That makes what is called glare ice, solid ice, which is the most dangerous to try and drive on if you do not have snow and ice tires. Had another link from Yakima Herald. More photos from last weekend's storm. It's just amazing how intense it was. And I think we mentioned yesterday that Washington, D.C.'s police force went on out to all those cars stuck in the snow that couldn't move and started writing out parking tickets. $1 million worth of parking tickets. Amazing here. Prince William got put into a deep freeze. And it's not just the United States of America and Great Britain. You know, carbon Nazis are saying, okay, well, it's cold in North America, but the rest of the world is broiling from carbon dioxide, and you've got to pay a carbon tax. So there's stories coming out of Vietnam. They've had, so far this winter, a record cold time. Cold spell takes heavy toll on northern Vietnam. Hanoi set a cold temperature record for 40 years, lowest since 1977. And apparently they've had snow in central Vietnam for the very first time that anybody can remember. You can imagine these people coming out of their homes and looking up and saying, what the heck is this stuff? I've seen it in National Geographic. It's called snow, but we've never had it here before. And unfortunately, the hard freeze has harmed their local agriculture, and they're actually starting to have some vegetable shortages in their supermarkets. It turns out that Winter Storm Jonas was the fourth strongest nor'easter since 1950. In other words, it's the fourth strongest since I was born. More snow showers are moving through the Baltimore region. And there was this story that was picked up over in the Daily Mail about this couple that lives in New Jersey that wanted to go on out and shovel off their walkway. They opened their front door of the house. It was snow all the way from the bottom up to the very top. You know, the imprint of the door was in the snow, just completely blocked in. So, look at these pictures and go on back and remember how back in 2000, the carbon Nazis were saying snowfalls are now a thing of the past. And they're still out there today trying to figure out some way they can convince you the world is still getting warmer, it's all the fault of your carbon dioxide, and you have to pay a carbon tax. How many more times do you have to be lied to get money, work, and your children's lives away from you before you decide, I've had enough, I'm not going to be lied to anymore. I will have a truthful government, or I will have no government at all. We all need to adopt a zero-tolerance policy. If you're a parent and you catch your child lying, what do? You punish them. Why are you going to cut the government some slack because it's the government? No, liars are liars. We should reject them. The best thing we can all do right now is, after so many lies by the government, is just say, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. You can flap your gums all you want. I am not paying attention. I'm going to put my little earbuds in and listen to some music, and you can stand there and go blah, 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 blah. All you want. It's totally wasted air. You're using up the planet's oxygen. Al Gore's going to hate you. Anyway, another little article we put up there, and I need to bump it up to the top because I think it scrolled off the bottom of the main page. Came out of Conscious Life News. I was a paid internet shill, how shadowy groups manipulate internet opinion and debate. And it's basically a first-person story by somebody who got suckered into working for one of these outfits that hires people to prowl blogs like mine, chat groups, message boards, and post propaganda. In this particular instance, pro-Israel propaganda. These are the people who go on out there and scream, oh, you're an anti-Semite, you're a Jew hater, you want Hitler to come on back. And they get paid very well to do it. And this is a first-person confession. And, of course, we all know this has been going on. The government does it. Remember, the U.S. government spent millions of your tax dollars buying special software so that one propagandist could maintain hundreds of phony identities on social media and just keep on blasting and propagandizing you to keep you from finding out what's really been going on. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials and top-of-the-hour news. We'll be back with the Lady Claire after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. And for those of you watching on BAM User TV, the gorgeous creature sitting behind me is the lovely Lady Claire, who joins us on Fridays with her unique perspective on the world. And what is the first thing you want to talk about?
Well, I'd like to talk about China. The Chinese Navy will likely deploy an aircraft carrier for permanent operations in the South China Sea, where China and other countries in the region are feuding over competing territorial claims, an expert said. Professor Chu Shulong, the director of the Institute of International Strategic and Development Studies at Tsinghua University in Beijing, told ISH Janes the deployment is likely to occur when the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy's second aircraft carrier is fully operational. My sense is that it's not going to be too long before that happens. And he also said for the Northern Sea, Yellow Sea, and Eastern Sea, China doesn't need an aircraft carrier. Chinese land-based aircraft are capable of reaching places like the Diaoyu Islands, Chu said in a reference to the territories also claimed by Japan and known in Tokyo as the Senkaku Islands. A short memo to the U.S. government, playing chicken with a Chinese aircraft carrier to express our displeasure over China potentially patrolling these waters is not a sane or sound strategy.
Well, unfortunately, China is allowing itself to be goaded into actions which the U.S. wants. I mean, we know that the U.S. government wants a major, major war as a distraction from the coming economic crash, and they've done it twice before, and it worked back then. It won't work this time because we understand that's what's going on. Mm-hmm. But that's the game plan in Washington, D.C., and that's why they're trying to provoke Russia and China. They were trying to pick off the world piecemeal. That isn't working. All these small countries are trying to take themselves back. So the U.S. has just decided they're going to go right to the top, war with Russia and China. And by the way, they're not going to be able to win. But unfortunately, our leadership have committed so many war crimes, they can't stop and turn around or they're going to be on their way to The Hague. And so they're thinking we're going to fight the war and we'll win, and the victors always get to be innocent, and the only ones convicted of war crimes are the ones who lose.
Yeah. It's really very annoying, the degree of obviousness that you're seeing with this kind of activity, Mike.
Yes.
Just absolutely. Next, I'd like to go over to an article from Zero Hedge, a place to which I link frequently. And over there was the article, Negative Rates in the U.S. Are Next. And apparently what's going to happen to people is that those who have saved will find themselves not at a positive savings rate, but a negative savings rate to punish people who did what they were always, encouraged to do, to try to get that money back into the market.
It's not a form of punishment. What's going on is the negative interest rates work both ways. And Japan went negative interest rates today. They're desperate to find some way to get the economy going again. And so what the negative interest rates do is if you're somebody who wants to borrow money, the banks are actually going to pay you to borrow their money and try and do something with it, which is a great deal for corporations, but it is a raw deal for the holders of savings accounts. Even when you had a savings account with a positive interest rate, that interest rate was always lower than the rate of inflation. So you were seeing your actual real wealth and purchasing power being whittled away. Now it's even worse than it was before. And obviously if savings accounts are going to have negative interest rates on there where they're taking money away while you have it, people are going to start closing their savings accounts. And that is why you're hearing all this talk about cashless societies.
Yeah.
You will put your money into the bank. Yes, we're going to help ourselves to some of it. Too darn bad. Welcome to the fascist New World Order.
Well, thank you very much, but no.
What's next?
Next, I'd like to talk about President Obama's war against the First Black Republic. I'm talking about the terrible things that are going on in Haiti right now. The administration that was chosen or selected apparently is so crooked they have to screw their socks on in the morning, and this is really bad. Apparently there is supposed to be an election on the 7th of next month, but there's a lot of questions as to whether that will handle. There's a lot of perception management that goes on in Haiti. And yet the only reason the corrupt Michel Martelly is still in office is because of how powerfully tyrannical they are against the majority poor in Haiti. And yeah, this is another torture. I wouldn't be surprised if he went to the school of the Americas. Apparently Martelly's son Olivier is indicted on drug money laundering charges, but no media publishes this. You know, it would be sort of like Barack Obama's kids getting indicted and held in Russia, but it's kept secret from the American public. And what makes me so angry, Michael, is that it is very disconcerting that Obama's American government values freedom, human rights, and democracy only when it doesn't get in the way of large corporations and very moneyed individuals doing business.
That's exactly right.
And when it doesn't, those values are honored in the breach, resulting in dictatorship and the suppression of the population, even through torture.
That's been the pattern of the United States government since at least the end of World War II, and we've seen it in country after country after country. But because the people of planet Earth understand that's what's going on, it doesn't work anymore. Starting with Iran in 1979, these conquered countries being ruled by puppet regimes are standing up and kicking their puppets out. That's why the U.S. is trying so hard to get back into Iran. They tried in 2009 and failed miserably when the son of the Shah stood up and opened his big mouth and revealed what the game plan really was going to be. But that's what they did in Afghanistan, what they did in Iraq, what they've done in Libya, what they've done in Yemen, and all these other countries. And sometimes it's a success, and more often than not, we're seeing these quagmires where the U.S. is having to go back into Iraq for, it's either the third or fourth time, go back into Yemen for the second time, go back into Libya for the second time. Yeah. That paradigm of global conquest just does not work anymore, but apparently the powers that think they are in Washington, D.C. can't come up with any other new ways of trying to run the country. I mean, I would like to say, if the war isn't working, let's call it off and spend all that money rebuilding our manufacturing and healthy agriculture and go back to peace through commerce. Unfortunately, all of our top leaders now have all these war crimes attached to their name, torture, drone strikes, and the rest of it. So they're feeling their only possible future course of action is to go make more war until they're victorious. Yeah. The downside being that I think they're going to go make more war until they are defeated. And they're going to wind up in war crimes trials anyway, but in the meanwhile, millions of people are going to be killed or have their lives destroyed. Yeah,
I'd sort of like to, because you touched on it briefly, I'd like to bop on over to Libya right now.
Okay.
The United States has deployed military personnel to Libya in an effort to establish contact with militias and other forces that Washington may be able to back in the fight against Daesh, the Pentagon said Wednesday. Remember, the moderate rebels.
Well, again, what's going on is Libya, the people of Libya are trying to take their country back from U.S. puppet rule. And anytime they talk about Libya in the media, you're going to hear this phrase, the internationally recognized government of Libya.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's because the people of Libya don't recognize it as a legitimate government.
No.
It's the government the United States has put in there and is trying to keep in there through force of arms. And what are being labeled as rebels and ISIS and terrible people are just people of Libya saying, we want our country back. We want to run our country for our benefit and not be plundered by these Western corporations who are looting us and in turn turning around and giving the money to the private central banks out of this bogus idea of an obligation to pay the money that never existed in the first place. And this, it's that whole 11th marble thing. It's going to destroy the entire planet if we let it.
Yeah.
Okay?
And apparently the Pentagon is looking for partners worthy of the fight. I love that use of words. Worthy of the fight against Daesh.
In other words, who'll do what they're told to do. We got to take a break for commercials here. We got a caller waiting on the line.
Okay.
And we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go ahead and grab a phone call from Mark in North Carolina. Mark, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? Mike, a couple of things. One, I just basically this is pretty much a question. what do you think is going on with the stock market? I just see it went up 194 points today, and I also noticed they made a big deal about the earnings of these credit cards, which doesn't surprise me because they're just throwing these things at people like confetti. I get them all the time in the mail. I just rip them up, but I guess they want to really get everybody really to into debt again.
Well, see, the way the system is set up, they constantly have to find a larger pool of borrowers to borrow money to allow that money to be created. Then some of that money goes to pay the interest on the older money. It is a Ponzi scheme, and they're running out of people or that they can convince to borrow. And yeah, I get all those same things all the time, and I shred them. And if all debt was paid off, there'd be no money in circulation, is the way that this whole thing is set up. As far as the stock market, it's being rigged, and they've been doing it ever since the Clinton administration. It's a group called the President's Special Working Group on the Markets. Its nickname is the Plunge Protection Team, and they have access to all this instantly created money from the Federal Reserve to go on in and buy up the indicator issues and keep the stock market up so the government can use it as a political banner to wave at us and say, see, the stock market soared today. The economy's doing wonderful. And if you're going hungry and you've lost your job and your home and your business, it has to be your fault. We're doing a good job. Look at that stock market. And that's all it really is. And we know LIBOR got rigged. Gold and silver prices got rigged. The unemployment numbers are an absolute complete fiction. And yeah, they're rigging the stock market. They can't make anything actually better. They're just going to make it look better until the public wises up and says, okay, enough of this.
But how long can they get away with it? I mean, before the stock market just totally crashes?
Well, until they run out of ink and paper or until the rest of the world decides the dollar isn't worth anything and drops it.
Wow. The other thing I want to point out is, I don't know if you probably do know about it, but they've got this bill they're trying to push through. They're trying to fast track it. McConnell is pushing it, where they want to basically grant the president the ability to conduct war anywhere in the world without permission of Congress, just to do it. And I called my senator, one of my who's in a very strong primary fight. His name is Richard Burr, and there's this guy, Greg Bannon, who's challenging him. And I wanted to know what's going on. Is he going to support it or not? So the woman who I talked to, some kind of an administrative assistant or something, deputy administrator, she first was on it. She says, well, he's leaning towards it because he feels that the next president is probably going to be a Republican, or so that would be good. I said, she didn't realize who she's Republican. Probably thought she's stuck on some Republican stooge. I said, you're willing to put American troops' lives on the line all over the world, not to mention risking the possibility of World War III with Russia over that? Oh, wait a minute, I didn't say that. She denies she even said it. So I'm trying to get a hold of Dr. Greg Bannon, who's running for the Senate seat in this year, and get him the message out that this class.
All right. Well, let me cut in on you here a little bit because we're running out of time. Basically, the Constitution says Congress has to declare war. Okay. Under the War Powers Act, the president can deploy military forces to meet an immediate threat or emergency around the world, but only for a fixed interval of time. Then Congress has to follow with a declaration of war, or it's all over. Now, Congress cannot just say the president can ignore the Constitution. Okay? If Congress wants to declare war against the rest of the world, that's legal and constitutional, but it sends, I think, the wrong message to the rest of the planet. The problem with this bill that they're trying to fast track through Congress is they want to give Obama the ability to employ the army against ISIS anywhere it's found, including inside the United States of America, so that they could go up to Oregon and say, oh, we know there's ISIS inside that wildlife refuge, send in the tanks.
Yeah, but they say ISIS, but really what they want to do, I think this is the way they want to overthrow Assad. And
of course it is. Of course it is. ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and they work for the U.S. government. We had that declassified document saying these were set up as phony enemies by the U.S. government to wag at you, to get you to go along with, oh yes, take my money, take the lives of my children. We have to get those evil ISIS. They put kittens in microwave ovens. We've got to get rid of them. And it's, again, it goes all the way back to George Orwell's 1984. The state manufactures the enemy that the people are told to be afraid of. Emmanuel Goldstein, or in this case, Emmanuel bin Laden, or Emmanuel Ahmed, whatever. It's all a fraud. It's all a hoax. It's all theater. And you're absolutely right. This declaration or this authorization for Obama to just attack anybody at all is not about ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It's about basically going on in and killing any government that refuses to do what the U.S. tells them to do.
Well, people got to contact their congressmen and senators and tell them absolutely no. We're going to primary you if you dare to do this. I mean, this could result in World War III. This literally could be
They want World War III. That's the problem. The top leadership and the bankers want World War III. The leadership thinks that if there's a world war, we'll forget all about the corruptions and crimes, and they'll have somebody to blame the crashing economy on. And the bankers always want a new world war because it's their biggest money maker, their biggest, richest harvest of debt.
So, Mike, how can they be that crazy when they know that World War III would probably result in the destruction of the entire planet?
Oh, they've all got bunkers. You think the preppers they show on TV are... You should see the underground bunkers the government people have and the bankers have. They love digging on down. They've been making preparations for this for years. 90% of humanity gets killed, and hey, we all come out and we've got lots of land to build palaces and things on. That's the way they're actually thinking. Look at the complete disregard for the health and safety of Flint's children by their own city government. They don't care. You're just there to work and provide wealth and new soldiers and new laborers, and if we don't need that, we're just going to cull the herd. And that's another function for World War III, or the Zika virus, or whatever it is they're doing out there. Okay, anyway, listen, Mark...
The only hope... Okay.
No, go ahead.
The only hope there is today seems to be
Putin and Trump. I mean, Trump has already come out and said that as president, he is going to go back and we're going to be friends with China and Russia. He's the only candidate out there who's not pushing the World War III agenda. I mean,
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul, but he's fading in the polls here. But Bernie Sanders is out there saying, we can win against this and that. It's really insane out there. Anyway, got to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And Claire, what's your next item?
Well, the next item is so ridiculous, and what it's trying to do, I think the FBI just inadvertently and accidentally shot itself in the foot.
Oh, they've done that so many times.
The title is, New Hampshire Militant Busted After Buying Grenades to Bring Back the Original Constitution. And apparently a New Hampshire man seeking to get back to the original Constitution was arrested by the FBI on Wednesday after he purchased grenades from an undercover agent, telling him that he had another $200,000 on hand to buy C4 explosives and rocket-type stuff.
This is another setup so the government can say, we have domestic extremists and terrorists in our midst, and that's why we have to spy in you and grope you and fondle you at the airports and stuff. We're only protecting you from yourselves. You're just too crazy to really look after yourself.
And according to the investigation affidavit, Musso also allegedly claimed that he could sell large quantities of grenades and that he belonged to a group of people bringing back the original Constitution, while noting that he feared the government might be in on their efforts. Might call me silly, but this so reeks of setup.
It does reek of a setup because, one of the agendas here very clearly is demonizing supporters of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Just like they're trying to demonize gun owners and demonize the independent media. As I said earlier in the show, the money junkies and the government see the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as just an incredible impediment to their dreams of a new world order, and they're trying to figure out some way they can get rid of it, or at the very least, discourage Americans from standing up and defending that Constitution and that Bill of Rights. Yeah. Because that is the guard against government abuse. And already the government has found all these little ways around it. They're drilling these little termite holes through it. For the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, if you want to have freedom of speech, you have to stand in this little cage over here with a flashing light overhead. Yeah. So that real loyal Americans know that they shouldn't come over and listen to you.
And I have to ask a logical question here. Where in heck's name did this guy come up with the $260,000 to make these buys? Because, I mean, even with Weimar's republic-style inflation going on in this country.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And in some states...
this other FBI informant over there gave him the money and said, hey, go get us some grenades. We're going to restore the Constitution.
I mean, that's even enough in some states where the costs of living are low to buy a house outright.
Yes.
And one does not support the total restoration of the Constitution and Bill of Rights with violence.
I mean, I tell you, somebody gave me $200,000. We could get out of debt. We'd break even. That's about where we are right now.
And one does support the restoration of the Constitution and Bill of Rights with calm, rational thinking and changing and hopefully inspiring one mind at a time as to how important these documents should be in the lives of everyday Americans. We also need to point out the legislation in the 21st century which have eviscerated many of those rights granted to us by the Constitution and Bill of Rights, including the Patriot Act, the Homeland Security Act, and the NDAA, which should ultimately be removed from law by Congress. Now, here's the deal for me.
Or the Supreme Court. And again, going back to the United States Supreme Court decision, Marbury versus Madison, laws repugnant to the Constitution are automatically null and void. They're not supposed to have any effect. And anybody trying to enforce them is, in fact, acting illegally. And under the other U.S. Supreme Court decision, John Bad Elk versus United States, we, the American citizens, have a legal right to resist anybody in the government who is acting outside the letter of the law, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I mean, that was put in there for a reason, so that we can hold the government under our control, not fall under the control of the government. We've gone a long way away from that, which is why we're seeing situations where, again, like Ruby Ridge, Waco, and now up in Oregon, the government has been caught clearly on the wrong side of the law. Their solution is kill everybody so that people stop asking questions.
And this appears to be a desperate attempt to completely kookify, marginalize, and smear all of us who are completely peaceful when it comes to supporting the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And hey guys, here's the deal with me. I'm a Christian pacifist, Methodist. I believe in good faith negotiations to resolve international disputes. But the most important thing to me is these documents, the Constitution and Bill of Rights, are the original contract with America, as you say so frequently, and should be respected as the basis of all law of the land by all Americans. Now, Mike, I'm wondering just how far this trial is going to go before the judge throws it out of court as a complete setup with a not terribly bright patsy.
Well, it's going to match all these others that we've seen throughout the years. I mean, they're going to get a lot of headlines, domestic terror, Constitution supporters are all nuts, and, and 6 months down the road, the judge is going to say, this is clearly entrapment, and they'll kick it out of court, and the media will ignore it, because they're trying to convince you that your friends and neighbors are all dangerous kooks that you should avoid. Don't go on the Internet. By the way, this TV series out now called The Internet Destroyed My Life. I've seen commercials for it.
Yes, I have too. I've seen the promos.
Where they're out there trying to scare everybody from being on the Internet. Oh, my goodness, my life was destroyed because I went on the Internet. I should never have left the warm embrace of Fox News and CNN and ABC. How could I have been so foolish as to turn away from corporate TV media? And they're laying it on with a trowel, which I think is a measure of just how scared they are. And I'd like to send out a little message to those of you who are parents with school children, especially those of you with school children that are being inflicted with Common Core. Because we know that Common Core is literally rewriting the Constitution and the Bill of Rights to teach your children a version of the Constitution and Bill of Rights that is more agreeable to government abuse. And you should take the time to sit your kids down with the original documents and say, this is what it really means. And this, the state-controlled schools, based on the Prussian model, are lying to you to make you more useful to the government. And that's what the Prussian model of schooling was all about, making sure that children were useful to the government rather than their own family.
And the children dare not counter their teachers in school. And I think that parents need to say, now, when you get back, there's going to probably be a couple of tests on this, and you're going to have to give the teacher what they've told you, but here's the reality.
Tell the teacher what the teacher wants to hear, because the other thing they're teaching the schools is you never question authority, no matter how wrong they are. And they are wrong. There's so many mistakes in the Common Core curriculum. But, the students are taught, it doesn't matter if it's wrong. You say the correct thing. We've seen these absurd examples
Oh, the math examples?
Where the
Hello.
math examples, where the kids
Lord.
are coming up with the right answer, and
Yeah.
the teacher will mark it down saying, I only wanted an approximation. And it is, they're literally mentally crippling our children.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they let all the lead in all these cities all across America, so that the next generation grows up too stupid to challenge the oligarchs.
And let me take that somewhere where I think it needs to be taken. There are a lot of cities where the primary pipes are still lead pipes. They haven't been replaced. They should be, but because of the fact that all of America's government's money is tied up in war, there's no money for this. There's absolutely no money, which makes these children a victim of all these endless wars.
Now, we are in a wartime economy. They don't want to admit it. There's an issue. If you've got pure water going through those old lead pipes, that's actually okay. The lead is not going to go anywhere. It's the chemicals that they added to try and purify impure water that started to chemically interact with the lead pipes.
And they leached.
And they leached lead and other chemicals into the water, and it accelerated the decay of the pipes. I mean, a pure lead pipe with pure water going through it, you know, the water is going to come out with virtually no lead in it. It's only when you have salts and chloramine and all this other stuff in there that starts to erode the pipes, and the effluent from that is what these kids are drinking. And it's like they're almost deliberately trying to destroy the brains of the next generation so that they're going to be, you know, obedient little workers that are too stupid to do anything other than what they're told to do.
Yeah, that lack of critical thinking can be dangerous.
That's it. We're splitting into the Eloy and Morlock, as H.G. Wells predicted. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And Claire, your next story is...
Chicago police have been sabotaging their dash cams. Imagine my lack of surprise.
Well, I can understand why they're doing that. I mean, we've had all these police officers who've actually gone to jail because they'll shoot somebody and they'll go in and they say, oh, he had a lightsaber, he had a saber-toothed tiger, he had all of this other stuff. And then the dash cam video will say, no, the police officer was acting badly. And the police don't like that. They want to be able to kill you and lie about it and get away with it.
With impunity.
With impunity.
And after the notorious video of Laquan McDonald getting shot by Chicago police officers 16 times went viral, investigators have been making their way through the other videos of the scene. In doing so, they've discovered that 3 of the dash cams pointed at McDonald that day did not record video, and others had no audio. Now, a Chicago Police Department audit reveals that many of the department's dashboard cameras have been deliberately sabotaged.
Which is interesting because that's actually a criminal offense, not only under the Illinois compiled statutes, Section 720. If any of those dash cams were provided with federal money, it's also a violation of Title 18. These police officers sabotaging their cameras, they're destroying government property, they should be going to jail.
Yeah, absolutely. And what the superintendent of police has been doing so far is detention. And
that'll teach them.
Yeah. But what the superintendent of police, and this is around the country, not just Chicago, there's got to be some game-changing going on. If these cameras are messed with deliberately in any way, the officers who did this should be fired. No chance of getting their jobs back, period. End of discussion.
And then sent to prison for breaking government property.
Yeah. No, I think that there has evolved an institutional culture within the police that everyone is the enemy.
Well, they get that from the Israeli training.
Yeah. But, you know, I have been very lucky in my life. I've had a few speeding tickets, I owned them, and I've had a few parking tickets, and I owned those too, but I've never had a confrontation with police. I don't know what it would be like to have a family, if you were a person of color on the mainland, and not really know or have in the back of your mind, is my kid going to be okay? Are they going to be able to come back without getting accused, shot, tasered, lasered, whatever?
We've had so many of these incidents begin with an innocent traffic stop where a cop will pull the car over and something goes on wrong and the cops just explode. And by the way, getting on back to that study that's coming out in the British Medical Journal about antidepressants, you need to remember that police in the United States are a far higher consumer of these medications than the average American. Overall, on the nation, it's about 25%. 1 out of every 4 people you meet on the street is on these medications that can make them violent or suicidal. But cops, it's much, much higher. There was a study done down in Florida where between 1/3 and 1/2 of the police officers are juiced up on the same medications that make the mass shooters go wild and commit murders.
Yeah, there is a real correlation, and somehow we need to get them off of these medications carefully with, let's say, a chill-down time while they are withdrawing from the medication so that, there is no temptation to do something horrific in that process.
While they're coming off the medication, they get a desk job because when you're coming off these medications is when your brain can just really go totally wacko. Yeah. It's a major, for the sake of pharmaceutical profits, we have drugged our entire nation to the edge of psychosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it manifests with some very awful behavior.
It really does. I mean, right now, it's a combination of bad medication, bad policy, but it's starting to be very hard to tell who's really law-abiding and who the criminals are. I mean, because of the civil forfeiture laws, the police are stealing more from the American people than conventional criminals.
Yeah.
The police are murdering more innocent Americans than all the mass shooters and terrorists put together. And it's got to stop.
Yeah, it does. I would like to bop on over to Germany and talk a little bit about the immigration crisis there. Apparently there has been a grenade hurled at a refugee center, and 40%... Was
it sold to them by an undercover FBI informant?
No. Fortunately, it did not detonate, but 40% of Germans are telling Merkel, resign. On Thursday evening, there has been a dramatic increase in Google for search inquiries for gun permits in Germany. Specifically, since January 1st, the number of Germans Googling gun permits has risen more than 1,000%. Let me say that number again, 1,000%. They're scared. Meanwhile, sales of non-lethal weapons such as tear gas pistols have skyrocketed as Germans look to protect themselves against what many see as a hostile foreign invasion.
And it's all over the place here. I mean, we're seeing members of the European Union government saying, we can't protect you, arm yourself. The police departments are saying it is simply too massive, we can't deal with it. Now even the Los Angeles Police Department is telling people in Los Angeles County, the response times are very, very long. Take steps to protect yourself, but don't you dare buy an assault rifle with a 30-round magazine. Yep.
Apparently, unknown assailants hurled a hand grenade at a shelter for asylum seekers in southern Germany on Friday, but the device did not explode, and no one was injured. The residents of the shelter were temporarily evacuated, but able to return to their rooms in the early morning hours. I'm frankly surprised that the number of Germans who want Merkel gone is so low. And my heart goes out to both the innocent refugees and the women and the children who thought the bombing is going to stop now that I'm in Europe.
Yeah, that's got to be an issue.
But my heart also goes out to the people in Germany and Europe who have been brutalized, raped, and beaten by some of these people. This is a huge and not at all thought-out social experiment that's gone horribly wrong. And, of course, the one thing that Europe should be doing is to tell the U.S. government to stop bombing countries in the Middle East, to control the oil and the currency in which that oil is sold, which is the reason for this flood of refugees. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
Well, no, it is a social experiment in trying to blend us all together. Europe is now saying that 6 out of every 10 refugees showing up are found not to actually be fleeing war and persecution. They're just being lured to Europe by these promises they're going to get free homes and free money and the rest of it. And again, it's a liberalist, New World Order agenda, and it is failing miserably because the entire intellectual foundation for liberalism, that we are all born with blank minds that can be reshaped by changing the environment, is absolutely wrong. It is based on a single work, Coming of Age in Samoa, by Margaret Mead, who is still lionized as this intellectual giant that justifies the entire liberal political agenda. And the book is flat out wrong.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're almost out of time here, but basically that's it. It's a huge scientific goof. She went down to Samoa not to find out what was really going on, but to just find something that supported a pre-desired outcome.
Yeah.
And anybody who knows Samoans, and we know a lot because they're here.
Yeah.
Her book is complete fiction.
And in the Samoan community, There is a value particularly stressed to the young ladies that they will wait until they are married to be intimate. It's a very strong value.
It's a monogamous culture.
Yeah,
and Margaret Mead wrote in her book, the Samoans were sexually promiscuous, and they were able to go from childhood to adulthood without the trauma of adolescence, thereby proving that environment is what controls your psychology. And it's flat out wrong.
Yeah.
Samoan teenagers have the same angst as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Margaret Mead assumed Samoa was sexually promiscuous because Hawaii of the same time period actually was. But every little island is completely different out here in Oceania.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're not at war with East Asia this week.
Good.
Or was that last week? I don't know. Anyway, listen, we're coming up on the end of the program here. There is so much intellectual dishonesty behind politics, and we've come to understand that what's been going on is because people don't listen to religion to tell them what to think anymore. The rulers have just gone over to scientists. We have an anthropologist or a climatologist to tell you what to think. But it's all starting to really fall apart. There's the music. Time for Claire and I to get on out of here, get something useful done. We'll be back Monday here on the Genesis Communication Network. Wave it, everybody, Claire. So have a good weekend, and aloha, America.